Welcome to The Quiet Truth, where a lay Catholic defends his soul and the souls of his family against the secular culture. I'm Tom Borak. Last time we discussed the team line that is almost universally used by politicians and political pundits in the United States to categorize political groups and ideas as leftist or rightist. We discussed how the line implies a falsehood that Marxist communists and fascist Nazis are opposites. The truth is that they both advocate absolute government power, that is, tyranny. Finally, I explained how this goofy left-right way of looking at things leads to polarization and political hatred. Where did we get this idea that fascists and communists are opposites? I have a theory. I think it came from the rhetoric of the communists and fascists themselves. I imagine it developed in pre-war Germany, where the Nazi thugs and the communist thugs were constantly brawling with each other in the streets. They were both trying to convince the German people that they had the answers to the horrific depression that their nation was experiencing. Both groups knew that they could not attract supporters by emphasizing the ways in which they agreed. So they didn't go around saying, "We're just like the other guys. We're going to end all human rights and give absolute power to a handful of our leaders." Instead, they each emphasized the alleged goals of their planned dictatorships. The communists talked about bringing down the rich in order to create a workers' paradise in which everyone would live well and no one would be oppressed. The Nazi rhetoric tended to be a bit more macho, emphasizing military strength, hard work, and racism, while claiming to eliminate poverty and provide a much better living for everyone. The communists claimed that the fascists wanted to support rich capitalists at the expense of workers, and the fascists claimed that the communists wanted to steal from everyone and create a grim race of faceless drones. So they put each other at opposite ends of their rhetorical spectrum. The fascists said that the communists were evil and would ruin the world. The communists said the same thing about the fascists. Then they placed the rest of the world in the middle between the two extremes, which they argued were good and evil. The communists and Nazis used the same team line. They just differed about which end is good and which end is bad. For no good reason, we in the United States are using the same line today. Now let's return to what I've called the power line and see how truthful assumptions improve thinking. Here, the proponents of absolute governmental power, the Marxist and fascist totalitarians, are at one extreme, and zero government is at the other extreme, which is as it should be. When sensible people look at this line, they tend to notice that joining the totalitarians is a bad idea. Few people want to be part of a group that includes both Hitler and Stalin, and both Kim Jong-un of North Korea and the leaders of ISIS. Certainly devout lay Catholics should immediately recognize that absolute governmental power leads to suffering, sin, and death. Most people, myself included, will also want to avoid the other end of the power line, where there's no legitimate government at all. Doing away with all government institutions is just an invitation for a group like a gang or a drug cartel or a bunch of totalitarians to move in and take over. So, if we're not drawn to either extreme, how do we make political decisions? If it isn't about helping our team win the next election, what is it about? The answer is that it's about pluses and minuses, costs and benefits. In short, it's about responsible adult decision-making. It's about decisions that will make the country a safe place for people to raise Catholic families and foster virtue in the next generation. Now, I understand that responsible decision-making like that is more difficult and less fun than just picking a side and believing all the rhetoric. If you choose the Democratic left, you can convince yourself that only leftists care about the poor, the elderly, and the oppressed, and that your opponents are all closet fascists. Go team! If you choose the Republican right, you can convince yourself that the Democrats are all out to bankrupt the country and create some kind of communist people's republic. Go team! But, as usual, the right path is the more difficult, and virtue is, superficially at least, less appealing than vice. Let's take the power line now and narrow its focus to a single issue, total government spending. And let's mark the point at which government spending matches the government's annual income. If the government moves to the right and spends less than that amount, it develops a surplus for emergencies, or can give the surplus back to the people by lowering taxes. If the government moves to the left of that point, then it spends more than it takes in and must borrow money to keep going. Where are our major political parties on this line? Well, the Democrats are here, and the Republicans are at about the same place. At least since the 1960s, both parties have voted just about every year for budgets far in excess of government income. So every year we owe more money, and we never make any serious effort to reduce what we owe. Every election, the Democrats blame the Republicans, and the Republicans blame the Democrats. Go team! What would happen to a family or a business that did that? It would quickly go bankrupt. All of its major assets would be seized by its creditors, its ability to borrow would end, and its ability to spend would either end or be severely reduced. Of course, the same is true of governments. It just happens more slowly. The crisis point may not be reached during my lifetime, but it will certainly be reached during the lifetime of my children. Politicians from both political parties are responsible for this. Or maybe I should say that they are irresponsible for this. They cannot be trusted with our money. They cannot be trusted with our nation. And they certainly cannot be trusted with the lives of our children and grandchildren. So, Catholics, please, don't be fooled by the team line and the political parties that try to pull you to the left or the right. If you get involved in politics at all, even by reading about it, remember that the entire subject is riddled with foolish and evil messages that must be rejected by responsible Catholics. Thank you for your kind attention.